Welcome along, and today I continue the series. I'm going through some of the army lists in the classical period, and I'm doing an analysis looking at the units available, strengths and weaknesses of the army, some suggestions on tactics, and so on and so forth. And I've been saying for a while that I was going to look at the Romans. This is the Roman 199 list. I used this list this season in the Digital League with the Greek allies, and at the end of this video I'll do a small short section on this list with the Greek allies. It's not much difference, just you get some pike units and you've also got the opportunity to take better cavalry. So we'll look at that. I actually haven't made my mind up if it's better to take the Greek allies. Maybe we'll work it out together. We'll have a look at this list as it is, the base list, and then if it's worth taking the Greek allies, because always what happens when you take allies, yes, you get access to a few extra units, but then you lose out as well on some of your mainline units. Overall, the Romans, and this list in particular, it's quite strong on the infantry. Let's zoom in a little bit. So you have effectively the what are in game mode, these are legionnaires, so they're superior and armored. So they're not called legionnaires, they're the Veteran Hastati, but they're essentially the same as the later lists legionnaires, superior armored impact foot. But you've only got access to 5. So I'm using 1600 points, as I've said before. This is what we use as a standard in the Digital League and classical section. So it will be of most use for people if I use the same points. So this is the kind of setup you're going to have when you're playing in the league. So we've got access to 5, that's the maximum. And then the Hastati I've maxed out on 10. Now they are pretty good. They're 61, above average, some armor, impact foot. For the price, they're a good unit. The Romans in general, especially the infantry, they just last forever. They get the impact, they all get the impact, and then because of their quality, above average and superior quality, they're going to have advantages in terms of morale and cohesion checks. The pikes that they're often fighting are only average quality, so they're going to have advantage there. The main disadvantage with the Romans, well, there's a few really. You don't get a lot of cavalry. So we've only got access to 3 armored cavalry, which is essentially the worst cavalry you can get. It's not noble cavalry, not lancers. It's just not that great against a lot of the cavalry that you're going to be facing on the battlefield. And if we could take more, if we had an option to take 4 or 5, then sometimes you don't need the quality. As I've said in other videos, a lot of the time it's not just about quality in this game, it's about the amount of units that you can bring to bear on one particular side of the battlefield, and this is especially so with cavalry. But when we only have access to 3 units anyway, we have no advantages. We've got no advantages on the quality, no advantages on quantity. So this area is a weakness, and you're just always using cavalry as backup, really, trying to cover flanks, trying to just waste time. the Romans do have these spearmen who are excellent. They're quite cheap. They're 43, and they're kind of anti-cavalry units because they're spearmen. They're also highly superior, so they are quite useful. The only thing is that because they're heavy foot, they're not so maneuverable. So sometimes it's quite easy for enemy cavalry to come around and get past them. But you know, especially if there's some, I've just set this army up just to show you, not as if I was going to fight a battle. But if I was going to fight a battle, maybe I'd be using, as just an example, the rough ground. Put my medium foot there, cover the gaps, maybe stretch my line a bit, and then make it more difficult for cavalry to come round. And if they do, then they have to go further round. So, there are things you can do with the Romans, but you're always going to be up against it when you're fighting cavalry. This kind of map might be a little bit of an advantage to the Romans, because you could move everything over. Let's just start doing that. You could move everything over, put the spearmen further on the flanks maybe, and then basically it's going to be more difficult because all this side is covered with forest and mountains, so there's less space for cavalry. So really, for the Romans, this kind of map, you want to be fighting here and making it, which is what you're always trying to do really with the Romans. You're trying to make it an infantry battle, main lines engaged, and just let the Roman legionnaires or early prototype legionnaires do their job, the Hastati. And a lot of the time you'll come out on top if you can do that, because as I've said, they're just tough units to beat. You don't get so many skirmishers. You've got, what have we got here? 8. We've got 1 unit of slingers, but one advantage is these are kind of the better skirmishers. They'll do quite well in melee against javelin men and archers. So you can chase away enemy skirmishers quite easily. They do cost a little bit more, 30. That's quite expensive. But overall, in the Roman list, they do a good job. And at 1600 points, you want to be taking around this number. Some players take more. But for me, I'm always just trying to get rid of enemy skirmishers and get my lines engaged. You have a little bit of medium foot. Actually, you've got a fair selection there. These Spanish medium foot Scutari are good because they're impact foot, swordsman impact foot, so against spearmen they'll get impact advantage. They are pretty good units, and if you can disrupt a unit on impact, then you have the advantage, and you've always got a chance to do that. And even this unit only costs 30, the raw legionnaires, but it's impact foot. I think it must be one of the cheapest, if not the cheapest, impact foot heavy infantry in the game, because that's only 30. I mean, a lot of even medium foot, 36 for Italian foot, which isn't a great unit, and yet this is, even though they're raw, they're protected and they're heavy foot, impact foot. So they're a good buy. You can bring a few the spearmen to cover your flanks. That will be important, as I've said, because you've got no cavalry advantage. It's a fairly straightforward list. There's not a lot of options with the infantry. You're just going for your, what I would call kind of the hammer style, really, with the Romans. Get your heavy infantry engaged as soon as you can. Now, there are a few different ways to set up. If we take out some heavy foot, and one of these, and one of these. So got 210 points. That's a lot of points. So we haven't maxed out on the Hastati. We've got 8 instead of 10. We've still got our max amount of veteran, and let's just say we can add an elephant. We can add 2 more skirmishers. Let's add some cheap irregular foot. And 30. So there are different ways to do this. We could add, well, we can maybe add another Royal Legionnaire. So we've got 4 units. We've got one of those. Okay, so we've got our elephant. So we've got an elephant. Elephants are quite good. 250 POA advantage on impact, so they can be devastating. And it depends on the army you're playing. Maybe if you're playing another Roman list or a swordsman heavy list, elephants are going to do better than against spear. We've got another impact foot, and we've got some lights. We've added some skirmishers. So you can see we've got more skirmishers, we've got an elephant, and we've got more infantry units. So if you wanted to, maybe if you're fighting the Spanish or a more skirmisher heavy list, then you're going to need less quality and maybe more units to fight the spam effectively. So you're adding infantry units even though they're not as good, and maybe adding a few more skirmishers. If you wanted some javelin horse, we could take out, say, 2 skirmishers, and you could add 2 javelin horse. Um, 36, and that gives us maybe another infantry unit. So different ways to play this out. Javelin horse is a really good unit. It made my top 10 in medieval, and it would make probably my top 10 in ancients as well, because they're just very versatile, multi-dimensional, They can chase skirmishers. They can support cavalry, charge into cavalry, bounce off it, scouting. They can do everything. They're very fast and maneuverable. So they're a really good unit. So that adds another layer to this list. Okay, so let's have a look at this list with the Greek allies and see what we think. So here we are with the Greek allies. The Greek 227 to 146 BC allies. What's the difference? You get access to 2 pike units. Here, and they look great, and mixed in with Romans, it's nice to play with them. Pikes can hold the line, 72 reasonable cost. The large units, 931 men as opposed to 465. So even though they're average quality, they're just that much bigger with that extra rank. Will give you the strength modifier. You just get a few extra little units like warband. You get access to 1 warband unit. The close order standard 58 is a fair price. They impact foot, so they're worth having. And then the way the points work out, well, you've got a choice. You can either go with these armored medium foot spearmen, so there's not many of those kind of units around, so any kind of rough ground they'll have an advantage even over other medium foot. Or you can go for a raw pike if you want, slightly cheaper. So different ways you can play it. The other main difference is you get access to 1 of the superior armored lancer units. So the Romans just don't have that much good cavalry, so that can be a boost with these guys. Other than that, it's more or less the same. You've got 1 less of the veteran heavy foot. Instead of 5, you've got 4, and also the standard Hastati, instead of 10, you've got 7. Overall, in comparison, because I played with this army in the league this season, probably I would say where I stand at the moment is it's not worth taking the Greek allies. And why do I say that? Well, because if you add it all up, especially, and what's so important with the Romans and how you're going to win is the heavy infantry. When I added it up, when I had on the base army, I had 5 of the veteran Hastati. I had 10 Hastati, access to 10, so that's 15. Whereas now I've just got 6 and 7, which is 13. Yes, I've got a warband. Maybe that goes up to 14 for decent heavy infantry. But you've got 1 extra veteran Hastati. I think overall probably without the allies is going to give you a stronger army, because also the problem with the superior armored lancers is it's just 1, so you've still only got 3 cav to take, and often you're going to be fighting 4, 5, 6 cav units. You just haven't got enough, and these units are just not going to hold these armored calves. So yes, your lancers might do well, might hold, but then these units are going to die off fairly quickly, and then you're just going to get outnumbered. So, and that's a lot of money to spend on that one unit. Probably the lancers work better if you can buy a few. If you could buy maybe 2 or 3 of them, then you can pack a punch. The skirmishers are around about the same. You do have, the way the points have worked out, you can take one of these kind of souped up skirmisher units, 33, but is it going to change the battle? No. It's not a huge advantage, really. So I think maybe just the base list is actually stronger. Adding the Greeks doesn't really give you much of an advantage, and in numbers, I think when I added up, I was on 18 infantry units, and yeah, it's about 18, and with the base list it was 20. In the base list I had 5 veteran Hastati, 10 Hastati, 3 of the spearmen, and 2 of the medium foot Scutari, and 1 raw legionnaire, so that I had 20 infantry units. And here I've got 2 less. I've got 18, whereas I've got about the same skirmishers. I think I've got 9, and I had 8 in my base list, and the cavalry is the same, except I've just switched 1 to superior. So overall, I don't think the Greek list really is worth using. It's all about the infantry, and so having 2 extra units of infantry could really change the game. I'm going to give a rating for the Romans. So Roman 199 list, I'm going to give it a B+. A B+. A lot of the time, the maps, battlefields will dictate if there's less rough ground. That's good for you, because you just want to get your heavy infantry going as soon as you can. You're going to keep your cav back, protect your flanks as best you can. You're going to do well against most armies with your infantry, but you're going to do poorly against armies that manage to get cavalry around you. Carthaginians come to mind. Armies like that have got good cavalry wings, you're going to be struggling more. Not to say you can't win, because in the league and in my experience, I've often beaten Carthaginian lists with my Romans, but you do have to keep your eyes open, take a few risks in the middle, and do more holding on the flanks. So B+. B+. Roman lists are good to use. Maybe for some beginners, I'd recommend them. They are a bit one-dimensional, but in that way, I suppose you could also argue that they're fairly easy to use. You're just moving forward, generally trying to be aggressive, which is always good for players to learn how to be aggressive. Using the advantages of your impact foot, and then seeing how much damage you can do. So I think for beginners, Romans are fairly a straightforward army. I think with Carthaginian list is it's more complicated because you're going to have to use all your different parts of your army with a Carthaginian list. You know, you do have some heavy foot, veteran spear, but you don't often have a lot of them. And the Carthaginian lists, as an example, don't have anything really like these Hastati. They drop down a fair bit after the veteran spearmen. They've got the imitation legionnaires, which are average quality, and they're at a disadvantage against the true Romans. So therefore you've got to use your elephant, lancers, skirmishers more. So it's more complicated. Romans more straightforward. So B+ for this list, and thank you for watching. See you again.